thank you all for being here. Really excited. They asked me to come talk a little bit about what is the CTA Foundation, some of the work we're doing, and then preview some research that we've started doing, looking specifically at how technology can really improve the lives of older adults and people with disabilities. So with that, my name is Steve Ewell. I'm Executive Director of the Consumer Technology Association Foundation. We are the charitable foundation that is affiliated with the Consumer Technology Association, and we are focused on how technology can improve the lives of older adults and people with disabilities. And when people ask us why we're looking to address these populations, when we started around 2012, so about 7 years ago, and we looked around at where our industry could really make a big difference in people's lives. We recognize the importance of STEM education for kids, but we know there's a lot of great organizations already doing work in that space. But what we found is when you look at the aging population, which is rapidly growing, we're going from a demographic where there's a lot of younger people to a few older people to really a balance, and eventually that pyramid is going to flip. And we're looking at a much lower ratio of caregivers for those older adults. So we saw an opportunity to serve those populations. In addition to that, when you look at people with disabilities, 1 in 5 around the world have some form of disability. That's over 1 billion people. So there's an opportunity here for us to address these populations. And we saw that as a charitable foundation. We could really embrace the technology and the innovation of all of you in the industry to really make a difference in people's lives. One of the things that we do, certainly our biggest aspect as a charitable foundation is giving grants. We support a number of nonprofit organizations around the country that are doing amazing work. But part of that, we also need to do some research. Really figure out how can we make a big impact in here, what are the trends, and how can we also explain to the industry the importance of this population. So in 2016, we did an active aging report and really looked at the market for older adults in particular. We also partnered with IBM on a look at where machine learning and AI could make a difference. We realize it's been a couple years since we did that, so we are actually getting ready to update the active aging report. The report's actually not published yet, so you guys are going to get a little first look at some of this information, and this is something that we hope to get out here very soon. But based on the study that we were looking at, we specifically looked at connected solutions and what impact that will have on the aging demographic. And this was also looking primarily at the United States market. And what we found is in 2018, that's a $9 billion market. But by 2022, that's going to be almost a $30 billion market. So we see rapid growth opportunity in this space. And really, that is looking at a couple different areas. One is safety and smart living. That's everything from your smart home devices to looking at some of the emergency alert solutions, products along those lines. When we go into health and remote care, that's telemedicine. That's looking at some of the medical devices that you'll see here over at the Sands that are measuring specific vital signs and other senses along those lines. And then when we get to wellness and fitness, that could be some of the activity trackers. That's things that can help us maintain a good diet and good level of activity. So those are the 3 major buckets, and when we publish the report, it'll go into a whole lot more detail as far as what each of those segments is looking like in the coming future. Part of what we also wanted to do was ask the seniors. We did a survey of 750 seniors as well as 750 caregivers to ask them their attitude towards different, towards technology and towards how they really want to live. This actually won't shock you at all. 99% of them want to live independently. That is in line with everything we've seen. AARP has done very similar research. 97% would prefer to stay on their own at home as they grow older, even if they need a little bit of help. And then, once again, you're looking at whether they feel confident using technology and whether they would embrace technology if it gave them the opportunity to be independent. When we look at concerns, though, there's certainly a lot of health concerns, a lot of concerns around falls, but actually the thing I really found from this is much like any of you that are parents and always worried about your kids, it kind of flips here. The light blue is the caregivers versus the dark blue, which is the seniors. The caregivers are a whole lot worried, or more worried about a lot of this than the actual seniors are. So I think that kind of is very reflected as you're looking at this market and where people are interested in different segments as to who is most worried about different potential concerns. When we're looking at managing chronic conditions, tying in more to the health aspect, people are open to using technology, particularly, once again, the caregivers were very interested in looking at technology that can help with alerting people to different ways that they can manage their conditions. And then we asked, what are some of the opportunities? Where can the market go to really address some of these concerns? And once again, I know this is kind of small text for up here, and once we publish the report, you'll be able to dive into a lot more details, but it goes into, emergency response, tracking physical location, and other things along those lines. And, also making sure that there's the right balance between being able to deliver the services and the safety along with also delivering the privacy, which is so important, giving people the choice to control how they want to interact with the different types of technologies. And then we asked also, what are the factors that really can help people decide to adopt these types of technologies? And this really actually aligns well with what we did in 2016 as well, in the fact that people are asking their doctors and other medical professionals about what are the technologies that they should be using. Now, the challenge that we have with that is actually the doctors and the medical professionals aren't necessarily the ones who are most up to date on some of the technologies that are out there. Now, the good news is we're seeing here at CES 2019 a lot of medical professionals attending. We're seeing the continued growth of the health tech market. So maybe that will be changing, but it also is something to keep in mind as we're looking at this market. So that's just a very brief look at some of the types of things that we're going to have in this report. As I said, we'll certainly be sharing that with all of you once the report is ready to go. However, I want to transition from looking at some of that aspect for aging. I have two great innovators in the technology space that are looking at wearable technology and how they can address the needs of different senses. So we have David Cannington from Nuheara, and we have Yonatan Wexler from OrCam. So I'd like to invite the two of them to join me up here, and we're going to have a little bit of a chat about some of the technologies that they're developing. So thank you for joining me here today.
Thanks, Steve.
Well, both of you, I really appreciate you being here. David, we've had a chance to know each other for a little bit, and Yonatan, we've had a chance to talk a little, so I hope you're having a wonderful CES 2019 so far. I want to dig into a little bit of the technologies that you're developing. As I mentioned, you're both addressing different needs and different sensory changes that people might be experiencing as they're aging, as they have different disabilities, but also, quite frankly, all of us can use a lot of these different types of technologies in different situations. I'll go to you first, David. The hearable market is really an interesting market, and we've been seeing more and more of that at CES over the last couple years. Last year, you launched IQ Buds here at CES. Tell me a little bit about what Nuheara is doing these days in addressing the hearing market.
Yeah, so this is our third CES. 2 years ago we launched IQ Buds, and last year we launched a product called IQ Buds Boost. And what's unique about Boost is it's really taking us into this hearing health space. The great thing about Boost is that it's allowing the consumer to actually do their own hearing assessment in the comfort of their own home, and then calibrating IQ Buds to their own personal hearing profile. So it's kind of like giving the person that's got a little bit of hearing loss the control to be able to take and manage their hearing loss without any sort of intervention from an audiologist or a hearing aid company. It's designed for mild to moderate hearing loss consumers, but it's all about giving them the control to hear what they want to hear.
Now, how are you seeing that market evolve? Obviously, here in the United States, where there was the Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act passed, and I know the FDA is working on the rules. Are you looking primarily overseas and then coming over here, or are you able to come out here?
So as you can tell from my accent, we're actually an Australian company, but we went global from day one. So we're doing a lot of business in the UK and the EU and also in the US. The thing about hearing loss is it's actually a global issue. And it's, according to the AARP, it's America's largest, and silent epidemic. But that's not confined to the US. It's a global issue. So different countries and different markets are approaching it in slightly different ways. If I look at the UK and the EU market, they've definitely been more progressive around, offering hearing solutions through different channels rather than just an audiologist. So for instance, in the UK, the largest retailer of hearing aids is a company called Specsavers, which is the country's largest optical retailer. So some really interesting things happening in those markets. But in the US, the reality is there's 40 million people out there that got mild to moderate hearing loss, and they're looking for a solution that isn't a hearing aid, that doesn't cost thousands of dollars, and that they can manage themselves.
Well, and I think there's a way to address some of the stigma that people see around hearing aids and really get people into the market. Keeping with the international theme, Yonatan, I've been following some of the work that OrCam's been doing over the years, particularly with the MyEye product, but now you just had a successful Kickstarter of MyMe. Tell me a little bit about what MyMe is and how you're addressing the vision market.
Okay. I'll start with the MyEye. Just give a background for people who don't know. Last year at CES, we launched this device, which is a special kind of sensory device that has an eye in the front, it has a brain, and it has a speaker in the back. And you can put it on your glasses just like that, and it'll tell you what it sees. And in that sense, we can provide people with the sensory information they don't have. And that requires a lot of AI, and everything happens on that device. And this year, we took the basis of this platform, the hardware, and our knowledge of the algorithms and the software to build a new kind of device that helps people with things that we all need. And I think you mentioned it when we talked. We live in a quite remarkable times. We can use new types of technology to help people in ways we couldn't do even closely or remotely before. And one of the things we all need is memory, right? We all lack memory, because we're humans and we're very curious and we notice a lot of details, but we have a hard time maintaining that information. And one of the difficulties we all have is that we meet way more people than our brains can actually remember. And for this, we created this new device. We call it the OrCam MyMe. It's a tiny clip-on. And similar to the MyEye device, it has something that looks like a camera, but it's not really a camera because it's just a sensor that can look and in a split second figure out, here are the people in front of me, and I'm going to memorize some aspects of their faces, and then I can provide my owner with this information. And again, everything happens on this device, so there's no issue of privacy. And this device shows me on my phone the people that I met, and I can show it if you want, I can show it a bit later. And we believe that with this, we are starting a new era of devices that use AI in order to help us. Because we live in an amazing time where we're all the time being bombarded with notifications and interruptions. And our brains, which are very curious, will always go to find what's new. But there's so much new stuff that we forget what really happens with us. And one of the things that have amazing impact on our health is our social interactions. And I find it mind-boggling that nowadays you go to a restaurant and you see people just sitting and staring at their watch, and at their phone. But they have this amazing opportunity to meet with someone and to interact and get some feedback. But instead, we all sit like this and watch our phones. And this is not very healthy. And one of the reasons that it happens is that we have no measure of how do we do socially. We have measures of how many unread emails we have, how many tasks we have at work, and what is the shopping list. But we don't keep track of the social interaction that is so critical to us. I mean, social confinement is one of the hardest punishments, right? We need that, when you crave that, and we get a lot of benefit from rich social interactions. But we have no way of measuring it. And what cannot be measured cannot be improved. And with this, we're doing the first step of helping people. And by next CES, we'll show you how much more help we can give people in such a small platform with no issue of privacy and amazing technology.
Well, I definitely look forward to seeing that continued innovation, especially if that allows me, you know, when I'm attending CES, and I love to meet as many people as I can here, but what is always the problem is next year when they come up and say hello, and I'm like, I know you, and it's just please remind me. So having that little reminder and cue, and maybe that connects to my Nuheara earbuds to tell me who I'm talking to. So, you know, I see some real opportunities. You know, we look at, you mentioned social connection, and social isolation is actually a real challenge, you know, here in the U.S. but around the world that we're addressing right now. You know, we look at some of the research says that being socially isolated, the impact on health is actually equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So this is something that we really need to be able to address. And if we're not able to hear or we're not able to see, that leads, you know, people down the road towards that social isolation. It keeps them from going out. It keeps them from getting engaged. So I really think it's important what both of you are doing to address this, as well as a number of others in this market. So thank you for doing that.
Well, there's, I mean, AARP brought out a study last year in conjunction with Johns Hopkins that spoke about the effect of hearing loss on other aspects of your health, from depression to anxiety to dementia to falls. You know, so a lot of these issues have wider health ramifications. So earlier intervention means a healthier, overall healthier lifestyle, basically.
Absolutely. Now, Yonatan, you mentioned that there aren't any privacy application or concerns with what you're doing. I'd like to touch on that a little bit more.
Sure.
Because, you know, obviously if you're having a camera looking out and you're walking through or looking out at the audience, you know, how are you able to address that? And then, David, I'd like to look at privacy as well, because that is a major issue for our industry now of, you know, how are you, you know, what are you doing with that data, and how is that both impacting the user as well as the people around them? So.
Do you want to go first?
Sure, sure. I think privacy is extremely important. It's been about 20 years since the internet started, and we all forgot that we do have actual privacy that we would like to keep. And most of technology nowadays is built in such a way that we basically feed the machine, and we're not sure what we get back. And we have big companies, we have big businesses basically spying on us, and that's part of the ecosystem. We're all part of one big ecosystem. We all carry devices that, you know, provide us value, but provide other people value, and we have no control of that. So I think it's a critical aspect. The way we handle it is we made sure that we build technology that is clever enough to notice what it sees. And it's not really a camera, because you cannot get a picture out of this thing. It doesn't really store the picture. It looks around, it memorizes things, and it extracts that information, and depending on what you ask for it, it'll remember it for you. And as such, it's like having a good friend, which is different from having a bad friend that will go and tell everybody stuff that they see, right? So it's not a camera because you can't take a picture out of it. You can't print anything. But it does give you the useful information that you would like to get. And you can tell it, I want you to memorize these people. I want you to notice if I say things, if I have a to-do item, I want you to memorize that. And we're going to have all this working for the customer, so it'll work for you. And us as a company, we don't have any access to this data, and we don't want access to this data. We want people's lives to be their own and provide them with the added value that we can provide by sifting through the jumble of information that surrounds us, because we all have so many things happening, right? We don't want to notice everything. But some meetings are important, some items are important. If I say, so I'll call you tomorrow, I want to remember that, right? Mm-hmm. I don't need everything recorded. I want these key points highlighted. And that's what we're going to have here. And that's why there's no issue of privacy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we obviously collect a lot of data, but we essentially just aggregate it and allow us to plan our product development internally around that data. I mean, we've got a lot of data around what percentage of our customers fit into the mild to moderate hearing loss category, what percentage fit into the moderate to severe. We take that data and basically, it helps us direct our product roadmap. And that's about the extent of it. So we're not pumping it out into any public sphere or anything like that.
Well, and I'd like to kind of touch back on some of the research that we're seeing that I was talking about as far as the growing market for the aging population. Obviously, you're both looking to engage people across the age spectrum and want to reach the general population. But do you see yourselves marketing towards older populations as well, and are you doing that in a different way, or is it really just doing kind of a broad messaging and trying to hit as many people as you can? How are you taking the marketing?
So from our perspective, we've really changed our marketing approach over the last 2 years because our first generation consumers were a lot younger. At the average age of an IQ Buds customer is 56. We know that the average age of a hearing aid customer is 70 to 75. They're becoming more savvy from a technology perspective, so we're definitely changing the way we market, the demographics, and the way we message to that older audience. So yeah, you've got to speak the same language of your customer.
How about you?
There's an amazing fact that is becoming pretty evident nowadays. People used to think that old people have diminishing brain capacity, but it's not the case. It turns out that we have diminishing perception. And you see it very well with the hearing aids and also with visual perception, which is, they're both very complex senses. And our brains have this amazing capacity of extracting useful information for this input. But as our senses diminish, our brains just slow down. And if you can give people the information, their brains will pick up and do much more with it. And I think we both focus on giving people the information that they need so that they can react, they can fulfill themselves, they can do better and live a happy life. And that's key.
My sense is that it doesn't matter how old you are, you want to take control of your health, right? Whether in our case it's hearing health or other parts of your health situation. So I think people are looking for tools. I mean, it's clear that people are looking for tools to do that. And you've just got to make it easy for consumers and your customers to be able to self-manage and self-assess and self-monitor. And if you can do that successfully, I think you've got a good business.
Well, and one of the things I didn't share earlier, but something we find time and time again in our research is, yes, there are very successful products that target a specific, the aging demographic, but in many cases, it's people want the same product as everyone else that they see wearing and using. So, they don't want something that stands out and says, well, this is, this means I'm older because I'm wearing this particular product.
Yeah,
so
absolutely right.
Being able to say I'm wearing the same thing that my kids are wearing and grandkids are wearing and so on, actually we've seen great success in that take.
Well, that's so relevant to our situation because, people say, well, you can see your hearing buds. I said, well, that's the whole idea of it. We don't want to look like a hearing aid because there's all this stigma associated with wearing hearing aids. Whether rightly or wrongly, there's just stigma associated with it. So if you're wearing a cool earbud, I mean, Apple have basically proven that you can put a pretty ridiculous thing hanging from your ear and have a great business around it, right? So being obvious is not such a bad thing.
Absolutely. I think there's some great marketing opportunity there. Now, another big topic that everyone's talking about here at CES this year is AI. And both of you are doing some fairly complex processing on your product. Talk about how you're integrating AI in both the audio processing as well as the visual processing for your products.
The key step for us is to be able to sort out, because we're using pictures and videos, so sift out all the millions and millions and millions of data points in order to provide our customers the value that they need and do it very, very efficiently and very quickly so that they have a seamless connection with the world. We had to develop ourselves the ability to read, and we do it now in about 30 countries, which is about 20 languages. We're basically covering the whole world. And again, everything in a tiny device, and it speaks many languages. We had to develop our own facial recognition ability so that we started for the blind people so they can have social interactions. And again, it's one of those problems that are often thought to be solved, but they're not really solved. Because when you have a device that's with you day in and day out, it faces a lot of challenges, especially if it's battery operated. But our next big thing is going to be natural language understanding. So for our blind customers, they can go to a restaurant and hold the menu and say, what's for lunch? They say, oh, I don't want meat. I want something vegetarian. And the device will tell, OK, so these are your options. You can guide it through. So you can even read the menu faster than sighted people can.
That's great. How about you?
Yeah, look, I think in an ideal world, it would be fantastic if you're wearing our product and you go into an environment and your hearing adapts on the fly to that particular environment, to your preference. Right. That would be a wonderful world in which we could live. It's a long ways off. It's certainly something that we have a vision around. Instead of you controlling how your earbuds react to a particular environment based on your personalized hearing profile, for that to happen organically in real time would be a sensational thing. And it's still a ways off, Steve, but that's certainly where we're heading.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the technologies emerge in both of your cases, as well as really across the industry. Now, we have just a bit over a minute left, so what I'd like to do is have each of you, without giving away any corporate secrets, although I'm sure a bunch of people in the audience would like to hear that too, what are you excited to see? And it doesn't necessarily have to be from your companies, but as we're looking at sensory technology and wearables that are addressing this space, where do you see an opportunity? What are you excited to see in the next 5 years or so, even further out if you'd like?
Oh, well, I think from our perspective, we're all about affordability and accessibility of hearing. There's 80% of people that are hearing challenged fit into the mild to moderate category. They're currently underserved. And we're absolutely focused about delivering a really well-rounded solution to those particular customers, from smart hearing buds to accessories to software solutions. So that's what we're really focused in. I mean, we're not going to disrupt the hearing aid market. The hearing aid market is very well established. They do a great job for the 10% of people who got mild to moderate to severe hearing loss. But we think there's a massive opportunity for that particular category, and we're really singularly focused on that.
How about you?
We are adding more and more cognitive abilities to our platform, and the way our goal is to build a personal assistant that is with you and helps you throughout your day in the things that we humans don't like doing, and free our brains to do the things that we like doing and we excel so much. And we're adding voice recognition and natural language understanding. The device, as we evolve, the whole platform will give more and more information. One of the subjects we're working on is diet. So we can keep track of what we eat and how we eat and our mood and what affects us and which people are downers and uppers, and provide that information to our customers so that they can do more and fulfill their lives better.
Great. Well, thank you both for coming here and sharing some of the work that you're doing as far as looking at how wearables really can address sensory needs for people of all ages and abilities. And thank you all for joining us here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.